history is one of the best, but one that nobody doesn't talk about anymore except for Boston fans. The 1983 Stanley Cup playoffs were quite interesting because it was the Islanders' last gasp as pretty well world champions. But when the Sabers and Bruins met in the second round, Sabers had swept the Montreal Canadiens, while the Bruins basically were finding a way to survive because the Nordiques were very strong in the first round. Quebec had won game 3, while Boston outlasted in game 4 to take it. This series had a lot of twists and turns, a lot of Hall of Famers, and a lot of goals because Rick Milton was at his playoff best that year. Now, the Prince of Wales Conference Division Finals was the second playoff series between the two teams. This was a rematch of the 82 series between the pair, where Boston won 3-1. Now, Middleton was terrific in the series. He set an NHL record for most points in one 7-game series with 19, 5 goals and 14 assists. Now, the big counter came in Game 7 in overtime. I don't want to give it away, but if you're a Boston fan, you know what I'm talking about. Now, Game 1 at the Boston Garden was a blowout for Buffalo. Even though Boston led 2-1 after the first period on counters by Ray Bourque and Barry Peterson. Lindy Ruff made it 3-2 for the visitors, and then he scored again. He's third. Then Tony McKechnie scored twice. Ramsey and Gillamel scored in the third period. Castro replied. Bob Sauvé only had to face 16 shots in the contest, while Pete Peters only made 22 saves. Now, Game 2 went to Boston with new hero Mike Krushelnyski scoring his first of the postseason, with Middleton getting his fourth. Keith Crowder and Ray Bourque scored in the second to make it 4-0, while Krushelnyski kind of scored the insurance goal to make it 5-1, with Housley, Ramsey, and Foligno replying for Buffalo some mop-up work in the third period. Now, Game 3 was a nail-biter, ladies and gentlemen. Buffalo won 4-3, a very, very tough contest for Boston. Craig Ramsey gave Buffalo a 1-0 lead in the first period by Bruce Crowder, tied it up, and then Fergus scored to put Boston ahead 2-1. Dale McCourt then tied it up in the power play, and the third period was nip and tuck. Dave Anachek put Buffalo ahead 3-2, with Peterson scoring his fifth to make it 3-3 at 5:59. And then Mike Ramsey, not known for his offensive acumen, scored to make it 4-3 with 3 minutes left. Now, here's where it gets freaky, ladies and gentlemen. Boston turned on the offense in Game 4, winning 6-2. Middleton and Peterson scored in the first period, while Paul Sear had a power play goal for Buffalo. Milton got his sixth at 12:04 the second period, while Dale McCourt replied for Buffalo. Now, in the third period, Krushelnyski, Peterson, and Mike Gillis made it 6-2 for the final, and Bob Sauvé was the catalyst again for Buffalo. Wasn't very strong, giving up 6 goals on 28 shots. Now, Boston was trying to put Buffalo out of their misery. They were so bad in this game, ladies and gentlemen, that an old coot like Phil Muir played the majority of minutes for Buffalo, and if Phil Muir at that time couldn't stop a bowling ball. Now, Bruce Crowder, Rick Milton, Barry Peterson, a shorthanded goal by Rick Milton and Mike Krushelnyski gave Boston a 5-0 lead after the first period. Then Barry Peterson, who had a great postseason that year, scored his ninth, with Dora Kruzak getting his first. Then the third, Steve Casper and Peter McNabb rounded up the scoring. Phil Muir gave up 7 goals on 29 shots, while Bob Sauvé gave up 2 goals on only 2 shots. Now, here it gets freaky, ladies and gentlemen. They go back to Buffalo. Boston is leading 2-1 after the first period, and goals by Brad Park, his first of the series, and Tom Fergus. Housley replied for Buffalo. But of all people, Hando Verta scored to make it 2-2, and then Mike Foligno, the jumping Mike Foligno, scored to make it 3-2 after 2. Now, Krushelnyski tied it up at 8:36, but then Lindy Ruff, his fourth in the postseason, and followed by Housley, made the final 5-3 for Buffalo. And Peters had a rough game, only stopping 22 shots. But here it gets freaky, ladies and gentlemen. You can watch this on Nesson Reports or whatever Boston channel you have. Rick Sealing pushed Buffalo had 2-0 with his first 2 goals in the postseason. Then Barry Peterson scored his 10th, and Brad Park tied it at 9:21, the second counter on the power play. No scoring in the third period. Now, Buffalo had optimum chances to win it in the third period. He missed quite a few chances. The Boston faithful was on pins and needles. But in the first overtime, and probably the greatest goal he ever scored, beside his counter in the 72 series, Brad Park scored a 152 to put them ahead into the semifinals, where unfortunately for a lot of people, they couldn't knock off the Islanders, despite the fact that Boston had split the first 2 games. See, the big problem that year, ladies and gentlemen, when Boston was on, they were scoring a lot of goals, but then they're off. Against the Islanders, they gave up 5, 4, 7, 8, and 8 goals, and 1 counter in Game 5. Pete Peters wasn't doing it for them in that postseason. But everybody at this time, the Nordiques were out, the Montreal Canadiens were out, Toronto was out, so Boston was kind of the last hope for a Canadian team besides the Western Conference squads to win the Cup. But that was a trillion-minute series again. I never thought I'd say this, but seeing Phil Muir, 12 years again past his prime, doing backup for Buffalo. I think Solvay was an okay goalie, but we got to remember, Don Edwards wasn't there, and Peters was okay, but he tried Roger Vachon, and he tried Michel Bunny-Larocque. But like I said, it wasn't working for Boston in the postseason. He needed a better goalie, which he didn't have, but it is what it is. And Ranford and Moog were a couple of years away. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a Boston Bruins fan, and I'm a big Brad Park fan, and I asked him about that goal. He was at an alumni game in Woodstock, New Brunswick in 2010, and I said, "What's your favorite goal?" Well, he said, "Yeah, 72 and against Buffalo in 83. And Stan Johnson was in the corner. He said, "He'll never stop talking about that goal with the media." I guess there's like 7 or 8 different interviews through the years he's done, basically saying that a lot of people felt that if once he got past Buffalo, they had a good chance against the Islanders. But I think the tough series he had in Buffalo, 7 games, I think that they were really tired by the midway mark against the Islanders, because the Islanders would drive you nuts, good on defense, good on offense. And like I said, back-to-back games giving up 7 or 8 goals, especially in semi-final round. And the Islanders weren't running up the score. That's just the way they played. They were like the Montreal Canadiens. And are more dangerous because Montreal was long in the tooth. Shutt wasn't scoring as much. Neither was Lafleur. And there they had Bossy, Trotty, Gillies, Nystrom, Tonelli. I mean, if one player wasn't going to score, the other one was going to. But it was Bossy's, again, last gasp before the back problems and the Gretzky years came up. But if you have a chance, see it on YouTube. I think Nesson has uploaded some of the highlights of that series and the goal, and the announcers just went completely nuts, ladies and gentlemen. But Game 7, Buffalo, Boston, the quarterfinals, 83. Again, one of the unheralded games in Boston history. More people should talk about. And if you would show that game, let's say if there would be a Boston Bruins, just a Boston Bruins channel, I would show that game at least once a month, because it learns you how. See, Boston was a lot older. They had a lot of young players too, and despite that, they were 6-7 years past their glory years with Cherry, and they were still booting it. And Rick Milton, one of my favorite interviews of all time, he basically always said that, playing in Boston Garden was like playing in it's like going to church. He said that was a church of hockey, and I couldn't agree. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. Boston Garden means a lot to us Habs fans, because the best games that Montreal ever played was against the Bruins, and usually we bet them, but they give us a hard goal. And I miss that era of Bobby Orr and Cashman and West Mazzito, when the goalies the goalies weren't that good. That's why you get 200 points a season, so. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a Boston fan, thanks for getting support. And don't forget, if you talk to Brad Park, mention that game. I think you might get an extra autograph out of it. Thanks for listening. Bye.
The show-stopping BMW i4 is electricity in its most powerful form, an impressive range, and the power of over 500 horses. BMW, the ultimate electric driving machine. Lease BMW i4 for $499 per month.
Okay, Matthew, you guys are back in the Stanley Cup final. Just talk about the emotions going into the weekend.
Kind of like a Christmas Eve feeling right now. So it's been a long week.
trying to keep your mind off it as much as possible and just enjoy, I don't know, I guess the warm weather, be outside as much as you can. But it's hard not to think about Game 1, and now that it's finally almost here, it's more exciting now than earlier in the week.
You've got games 3 and 4 in Edmonton. There's over 2,500 miles between there and here. What are you doing on the plane?
I'm just going to play poker. That's it. I guess I know them more than probably most guys by playing in Calgary, but we just had the one playoff series against them that they won and played them a bunch in the regular season. But there's a lot of different guys over there. I was just saying earlier, I don't even know if I've faced Skinner yet since he's been on the team. Maybe I have, but it's different. It's definitely